Hi, and welcome to What's the Worst That Could Happen. I'm Abby Whitaker, your host for today, and today I have Jayden Adams on, talking all things financial. As always, I'm going to get him to introduce himself because I never do it justice. Take it away.
Yeah, Jayden Adams Adams Financial Group. We are a boutique firm here on the Sunshine Coast in Bottinia. Obviously, we specialise in all things financial, from basically goal setting to reaching those goals, and that incorporates super, investments, cash flow, budgeting, insurance, all of the things. But yeah, we've been around for about 20 months, I think it is now. May 2023 we started, so had some rapid growth, which is nice, but also has its challenges, which I think we'll touch on a little bit here today.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today and having this chat. I feel like it's so important for people our age, but also people of all ages, to get educated and kind of take control of their own financial situation, and if they can have a bit of guidance on how best to do that, I think that that's really beneficial and important. So
yeah, it's a bit of a sort of myth around financial advice and when you should get it and when you shouldn't. So hopefully we can unpack a few of those sort of bits and pieces today and encourage some more people to get financial advice, whether it's with me or anyone else. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
There's plenty of what we call consumers in our world, being clients, and there's not a lot of us.
Yeah.
So anything that we can do to sort of incorporate and sort of increase that sort of projection. Keen to sort of explore that.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so before we get into that, I would love for you to talk us a little bit through your journey and how you've got to where you are today, and then we'll unpack as we go.
It's a bit of a journey. I left school, grew up in Townsville, played footy. That was kind of my life there for a long time, and surf lifesaving and all those sort of bits and pieces, and was quite good at school. Didn't really know what I wanted to do, but sort of as soon as I got to grade 11, it sort of clicked with me. I knew I wasn't going to be a superstar football player, so had to kind of put that onto the back burner. And I had a family member who ran a financial planning firm. So, I sort of picked that brain in a way, and I watched him work with my own parents, and I thought this was pretty cool, basically changing people's lives, and something I was pretty passionate about, obviously through life-saving and all those sort of bits and pieces. So I decided that was something that I'd go down. And as soon as I finished school, I moved to the Sunshine Coast from Townsville and decided to study at Sunshine Coast University. I lived at home in Brisbane. My family ended up moving down and drove from Brisbane to the Sunshine Coast every day for university and for work at that family member's financial planning firm, which incredible opportunity. Certainly don't take it for granted, and I wouldn't be where I am today without that opportunity. So that was fun and challenging at the same time. I then left that business, went to another firm for 2 years, and it wasn't kind of what I wanted. It didn't really sit right with me, what was sort of going on there. And that obviously led me to leave again and go back to my family's firm. So I spent another couple of years there. One thing led to another. Obviously, I had a business sense, and I really, really wanted to be a business owner. And I thought that was going to be there, but for whatever reason, that didn't occur. So made the leap in May 2023 after pretty well nearly 10 years in the industry, which flew by. And I'm quite young still. I'm 28. I have to keep thinking about how old I am. I'm 28, going on 29 this year, and to be 10 years in the industry at this age is, not many people can say that, I suppose, and a lot of learnings, but also a lot of, what can I do to be different? Mm-hmm. So that led me to do that, and obviously starting Adams Financial Group as a whole was a process that was quicker than I thought. It wasn't anticipated to happen so fast, and I kind of got left with no choice, but that's always the best part. There's no real plan B. Mm-hmm. There's no failure option. It's, that sounds a bit silly, but that's just when you're going to succeed. And that was sort of dawned upon me in April of 2023, and 1st of May 2023 is when Adams Financial Group was created.
Awesome. I actually really have believed in that concept for a long time. It's sometimes you have to hit rock bottom kind of, or not have another choice or not have a backup option in order to just take the leap. So that's cool.
It was on top of that, I had a 6-month-old and now wife, but then partner wasn't working. So I couldn't have done it at a worse time, if that makes sense, especially from a financial background. It was obviously a very stressful time, but like you said, that's...
Sometimes either you sink or you swim, right?
Correct.
And you swam.
I swam.
Really well.
Yeah.
So when you first started, this is actually when I first met you, which is really cool. How did you start off? Did you start off with a team? Did you start off on your own? Like, what's your process been then from like that starting point to where we are now?
Yeah, so obviously it was just me to begin with. I didn't have any staff for the first 10 months. Mm-hmm. It was, in my world, it's quite in another world, but I can only sort of speak for myself. It's quite a challenging part around how we get paid and when we get paid, but also the cost to even operate is substantially higher than most other industries that I've ever sort of seen. Mm-hmm. And obviously I've come across a lot of businesses since, being in this industry, and it's quite substantial. So I had to sort of go, right, well, how am I going to go about structuring my business? And unexpected costs, got a plan for them, but also, trying not to spend too much when you didn't have to. So it was a bit of a balancing act at the start, and I knew I needed to get some clients in quickly. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was about building my brand identity. So that was part one of it, and spent a bit of money on, creating my logo, thinking about my colours, what our message was. That was an intentional act. Mm-hmm. I want the A in my logo to be synonymous with who we are. So that was part one. But then also, easy option would have been to work at home where you don't have to pay rent. But I also knew I needed to have some, support around me, for a lack of a better term, because even though they weren't directly helping me, having that, leaning on of a accounting firm such as Fenwick here, where I'm fortunate enough to work out. So decided to bite the bullet and use that as a cost, which, some people might say, well, why don't you just wait? But once again, certain things along the path have led me to now, and I wouldn't be here without making that decision. So did that. We have software that we need to think about, and it's quite expensive software to get the best. Mm-hmm. So I didn't go down that path because I said, all right, well, I'll sacrifice a little bit here to get a little bit there. And so that were the few really intentional decisions I made at the beginning, and obviously I had to do it all myself. But with that said, over the previous 10 years, I'd done every role known to man, from scanning files and just putting them into a folder to, speaking with clients and presenting advice. So they were the few decisions that I really had to make early on to ensure profitability and sort of continued success, rather than just, it's done. You get your client and suddenly you're 6 months down the track and you're not getting any more clients. So there were a few little decisions I had to make, along with the baked beans on toast.
Yeah. I feel like it sounds like it was a real balancing act between being like a bit conservative with some stuff, but then also investing in some other things that maybe other people might have not understood. Like I know that you also invested like a lot of time and energy and finance, I guess, into like networking and connecting with like local groups and things around the Sunshine Coast, which some people, maybe if they're a bit older fashioned and stuff, would be like, oh, you should wait to do that or whatever. Has that been beneficial to you? Yeah,
for sure. Sunshine Coast Young Chamber of Commerce, I joined, years are getting on now, but it'd be about 4 years ago. And obviously, you're there to network, you get there to meet people. And I must admit, the way I probably initially in that first 6 months of that went about that was the wrong way. People always say, go network to get more business. And that's not really who I am on an intentional front. I actually just want to meet people. So I sort of switched my focus there just to be a genuine person. And that's what resonates with a lot of people, and that's what makes people want to work with you. So, so I went to the Young Chamber of Commerce, and I'd actually met Brooke and Dale from Fenwick previously through, gyms and a few bits and pieces. But seeing them and that success is kind of what led me to go, right, well, maybe we all can do that. So Young Chamber of Commerce, and then just sort of generically through the community, it's just the Sunshine Coast is quite a small place in itself, even though it's quite large. So if you know the right people and you meet the right people, it's certainly to your benefit. And, you may not call upon them and they may not call upon you for 3 years. There's a lot of people that I haven't had to call upon. But you never really know when that's going to happen.
Yeah, totally. I actually love that you bring that up, because I think that, well, the part that I love that you bring up is that I think Sunshine Coast is a small community, and when you're doing things like with but like an intention that people are like, oh, he's just trying to sell to me, or he's just like doing this to like climb a ladder or whatever, I think that people can like sniff that out a mile away.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when you like genuinely are just like love being around people, I'm kind of the same as well. I go to those things, but I actually just love, I find the conversations interesting because it's like-minded people.
Yeah, it's growth. It's your own internal growth. Like, we're probably similar in that we want to be better in everything that we do, that whether that's being parents or, business owners and friends and all those sort of bits and pieces. And that kind of allows you to be a genuine person, actually listen to some things that, you don't really hear it too often. And, with, insolvency, like that's something that no one really would have any idea, but you go to these things and you talk to someone about their insolvency business and what that might mean to their clients and how that makes them feel. And then them as, operating in that world and, sort of grabbing a little bits and pieces from everything and going, oh, how could I be better in those scenarios? And that's what I like about those type of communities. But other than that, it's just I've got a great friend group. I've got great family. And the Young Chamber sort of led me, to go down that path.
That's awesome. I love that. Okay, so where we are now is where I know that you've got some staff now.
Yes.
So we're growing.
Yeah, so March of 2024, I invested in my first staff member, and it was an offshore administration officer, and it's quite common in our world. There's a lot of safety and regulations sort of put around it, so you can invest in the right quality. So I went down that path on once again, balancing of costs, timing, all those sort of bits and pieces. I was somewhat at a point in the business where, I really needed to get through the work of the clients because there was a lot of new clients still coming through. We'd built up a reputation and you obviously done good things. So you really needed to sort of push on with that. But at the same time, I had existing clients that I really wanted to focus on, that they needed my attention, and the administration burden was sort of just coming upon me. So I invested in someone probably a little bit earlier than what I needed to. And that's probably something we can delve in a little bit deeper. It's once again getting that balancing act. It sounds so silly, but you really got to trust your gut, because you know your business better than anyone. You know what's come through the door, you know what's been, and you know what's hopefully going to come, and you got to be confident in what's going to come in order to make those steps. So I made that step probably about 6 weeks earlier than what I needed to. Thankfully I did, because that sort of proceeded to be my 3 biggest months, obviously of business at that stage, which you need to do once you're investing. So did that in March of 2024 rather, and the growth was once again quite significant. Had to throw a wedding in there, had to throw a honeymoon in there, obviously still being parents, obviously. And then I came back from that wedding and honeymoon, and the influx of clients had continued, and there was a bit of backlog, and we just had our busiest time of year, which is June, July. I thought once again I need to sort of get on top of this, so made the next step to hiring, and I really wanted to get someone in-house so we could build somewhat of an environment. They could be part of the office here, and even though Fenwick and Adams are quite different and quite separate, it's a nice little family in here. So our team's obviously of 2 at the time, but we felt much larger than that, which is nice. And so we made that step, once again, a higher investment. We pay pretty well in Australia in comparison to what we have to pay to these offshore contractors. So made that step in it was actually September. I couldn't get Ellie, who now joined our team, until October. So I had a period there of hustle. And once again, the 15-hour days, they just become part of business sometimes. And you don't want to do it too long, and hence you got to put the investment in. So once again, you start to feel like your pockets are starting to fill up a little bit, because you can actually take some business profit, and for me just to reinvest it, which is not a bad thing, right? Yeah. But it's just the evolution of business.
Absolutely.
And you can know that through all your business sort of ventures. So yeah, that's where we led to that point. And then it was quite a tricky transition period then, because when Ellie came onto the team, Ellie was phenomenal. You know, she picked up the ball straight away, and that somewhat had a detrimental impact to our offshore administration officer for unknown reasons, right? He, who was offshore, that is, his work quality decreased, his timing increased to do tasks, and that probably just wasn't fitting in with where the evolution of the business was going. So we tried to sort of fix that without having to make too many changes, and it didn't eventuate for whatever reason. So in the last 3 weeks of 2025, which leads us to now, I have another staff member that's just starting with me today, actually. So we've got a team here of 3 in the office now, and that's where Adams Financial Group's at the moment.
Amazing. So in that time, you let go of your offshore person? Okay, cool. Amazing.
So we talk about a bit big, not big stuff-ups or anything along those lines, but
challenges perhaps.
It's certainly a big challenge that I've had to navigate and, make the right call, because once again, even though you're replacing one, it's still a higher investment from a cash flow standpoint. So profitability, once again, goes back into the business.
Yeah, and I feel like for me personally, some of my biggest challenges in business have been around staff, when to hire, when to fire. And, like I'm an empath, you're an empath. It's like there's the point where you have to make a decision based on your business, but then there's also the point where you're like considering all these other feelings and emotions and like other factors, right?
Yeah.
And so it's quite like emotionally tolling, I've found, especially when firing. And someone told me very early on, hire slow, fire fast, which is something I've definitely done a bit more of now. But I could imagine that's challenging.
It's a challenging part of the world we live in, and it just is what it is. Like it's not necessarily, sometimes, like obviously as a business mindset, you automatically think about your profits and your expenses and all of that. That's just a natural sort of progression. But it's, particularly how I find it is in my world, it's the impact it has on clients. And then that impact on clients, who do they tell? Do they get angry with you? Do you have more challenges that you need to spend more time on that client? Do they leave? Not only have you had, timing stuff ups, you've now lost more money because time's money, number one, and then you've lost the client who's paying you a fee.
Yeah. And I feel compounds. Like it's like a trickle-on effect, because when, like, again, Sunshine Coast, small community, and in general, it's like you don't want, there's, again, a balancing act with growth and growing too fast, right? Because people only get one opportunity. You only really get one opportunity to make, like, you can do 10 good things and then one bad thing, or like drop the ball once, and people remember that and they leave and they're not going to come back.
Yep.
Like, to get them back is just like, so it's the reputation as well, right? Or like that trickle-on effect of like, yes, you lost that client, but also they're not going to refer someone, or...
Yeah, it's just compounding, hey?
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I want to change the pace a little bit. You're like, so being a financial planner, what is it? And what are some of the myths? Because I feel like I remember when I first came to see you, I was like, why am I seeing you instead of Brooke and Dale? Like, why am I talking to you instead of the accountants? Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's what is financial advice? It's an industry that has got reputations, let's put it that way, and for the wrong reasons. Over time, there's been, we use the word cowboys, but it's not right, probably the right terminology, but there's been some financial advisors in the past who haven't done the right thing. They've done things for own benefits. They've done things for higher commissions and all these sort of bits and pieces. So that sort of led to a poor reputation amongst us. We are a profession, just like accountants, just like lawyers. So, we are needing to be treated like that, and we see ourselves as that in our world. But basically, as a financial advisor, our job is to establish what a client's goals are, whether that's short, long, medium, and understand their preferences. And that becomes down to, people like property, people don't like property. People really love shares, people feel really nervous with shares. What their appetite to what we call risk is, and manage all of those sort of bits and pieces, dig deeper as to why. You know, the one thing I always get when I talk to people, I say, what are your financial goals? And everyone wants to be wealthy, or they want to build wealth in a tax effective way, which is great. You know, that mindset's right. But my job and our job as financial advisor is to dig deeper as to why do you want to be wealthy? Sounds a bit silly because everyone just wants it, but why? People then say, well, I want to be able to go on a holiday every year. People say, I want to be able to stop work earlier. People say, I want to continue to work, but I want to have the flexibility to do this, this, or this. Or I want to be wealthy to send my kids to private school. There's all these little bits and pieces that we need to delve a bit deeper into, because I can tell anyone what the optimal financial thing for them to do is. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing. So our job is to obviously establish that and then tailor a financial plan in a world that what we call a statement of advice. And that financial plan is to give you that advice to go and sort of meet that goal.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the myth around financial advice, or one of, is, you know, you're going to be rich tomorrow. You know, the reality is it rarely happens. And there is scenarios where people do. But our job is to educate, understand what those goals are, and talk about, okay, well, this is your time frame. If we want to do something in that time frame, this is the amount of risk we're going to have to take. Educating clients to say, okay, well, what happens if I didn't want to take that risk? You know, okay, well, this is the time period then. And sort of just going through that process as a financial advisor is really, really important. Converse to an accountant, you sort of said, why am I coming to see you in the very first time? And I remember it. Accountants and business advisors are limited to what they can speak about. You know, they can't tell you to go buy a property. They can't tell you to go buy this share or set up, you know, this investment account. That's what financial advisors do. So finding that right balance between business accountants and advisors, and then financial advisors rather, is quite a nice balancing act, because sometimes business advisors and tax accountants can overstep the mark. And Family Collective are really good here in that they go, well, this is where I'm capped. You know, I can't talk to you about that. And that's where the financial advisor steps in. So we work really, really well and hand in hand as with accountants. And I work with other accountants other than Fenwick when clients have those, their previous accountants or whatever it is. I'm not really I don't make anyone do anything. That's certainly not the way I am, but I can work with anyone. So, you know, speaking with the accountants and understanding, okay, well, this is Abby's goal. Understand that business is doing this. Okay, well, if we needed to, you know, move and structure it over this way, how could we do this from an accounting perspective? And having those really in-depth discussions behind the scenes and going to clients with, you know, proposed outcomes and plans. Like
a full picture. So accountants and financial advisors are friends.
Yes.
They're happy to talk with each other.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there's obviously some out there that prefer not to. And accountants can be financial advisors as well if they've done the qualifications, but that's sort of diminished over time because the qualification standards have increased substantially to be a financial advisor. Hence, we're moving into the professional stage where we can be called a profession. So that's essentially a myth, or some myths around financial advice and what we actually do.
Okay, cool. So when you are a financial advisor, does that mean that you, like, it's more risky because you're giving more in-depth advice in terms of, like, how does it work with, say, if you tell me, okay, well, I've done this big assessment, he has a big picture, I think you should go buy these shares or buy this house, and then the housing market crashes or whatever. How does that work? Is there like...
Yes, so we give what we call product advice and a statement of advice. We can do general advice and then we can do personal advice. In that personal advice stage, we've taken into consideration all of your personal situation, your objectives, and then we've recommended a product. Not always, but we're generally speaking, you know, when we go buy shares, we're telling you or advising you on what share to buy, and we're advising you on a platform to hold those shares. Same for super and same for insurances. So
and that's considered a product.
That's what's called the product. So, you know, your industry super fund out there, and I won't name like any just for the sake of this, but an industry super fund is a product. Okay. So that's where the risk comes, because we are trying to sort of move forward in a way of a goal that says this. And if things don't happen the way that it was intended, there's significant consequences financially versus an accountancy practice who, they have 12 months to amend tax returns. They have a period of time where they can do certain things. Obviously, don't get me wrong, there's obviously implications around, advice, tax advice. But certainly, we carry a lot more risk. There's a very controversial thing that's going on in the world that no one really hears about in our industry that's going to cost financial advisors a lot of money to protect the bad financial advisors, if that makes sense. So there's a very controversial sort of plan moving forward that at the end of the day, if we have to cop big costs, it comes onto consumers. And right now, financial advice in our country is not really affordable. So we're trying to fix that, but then we keep getting these higher costs because we are a bit more risky. So, but at the same time, we tailor risk. Like someone's a balanced investor. There's certain products that you can use that get you the same outcome for a balanced product investor versus a high risk investor. You can use different products for everything.
Yeah.
So, once I'll be honest, in my world, I don't take the risky products. I don't think there's a need for it. And if it's someone's goals are, that deep and that sort of risky, I probably just won't work with them. And that's not to say that it's wrong and they wouldn't get that success, but I just think that there's a different way to do things all the time.
Yeah. And I feel like, even just from this conversation, I feel like you are quite conservative in some ways. You kind of don't, you're not out there being buy all this coin and vote Trump or whatever. But, I think it's cool that you also can assess clients as they come in and be like, that's okay that you think that way. But, I don't feel like this aligns for me to work with you because it doesn't make me feel comfortable or there's some kind of value mismatch, I guess.
Yeah, and it's not often, don't get me wrong. Normally you have those discussions and people can understand why that may not be the best thing for them either. So it's very rare, but having those open discussions, I'm a very open book. Anyone can ask me anything, whether you're a client or not, and I think, once again, that's what makes me genuine. That's what makes people sort of connect with me well. So, like you said, you can have those discussions. You can say and see when it doesn't align, and you don't have to.
And it sounds like that's part of your success is when you were talking about creating these financial plans, or is that what it's called?
Yeah, financial plan.
You talked about really tailoring it. It's not just a mathematics sum. It's really tailored, which means that you have to be good at your job, you have to really be able to connect with your clientele. And it sounds like you do a really great job of that.
Yeah, and really understand them. So the things that can, coming back to it from a business perspective, the things that can get in that way is too much work. Other challenges around administration, and you can turn up and not be your best self in that meeting with the client. So it's really important to make sure you maintain those sort of boundaries and what you need to do and when you're in that meeting. That's been a couple of challenges over my time. I'm pretty good at resetting pretty quickly and focusing on the job at hand, but it's certainly something that I know a lot of advisors can get caught up in that business and costs and all that sort of stuff can sort of drive the way that you turn up to a meeting. And you just don't delve deep enough into an individual's goals, and then suddenly it's a rip once again.
Yeah.
Trickle effect. You missed something or you didn't interpret something the right way. You get to the advice meeting and they say, that's not how I envisaged this. Whereas we should always be getting to those advice meetings and everything being tailored exactly to our discussions. So, a few challenges there.
Yeah. So if you could think of one or two of your biggest challenges.
Oh, certainly the offshore administration before. And granted, I'll probably be a little bit guilty there in that the way that to get the best out of the offshore is you really got to invest a lot of time and documented processes and things like that. And obviously when it was just me, I did everything. So, I didn't necessarily sit there and write myself a Word document on how to do this and this and this.
It's always a challenge, especially when you are so passionate about what you do and then you're doing like all these roles at once. I've had the same thing. It's like creating systems at the start when you're doing it yourself, because you kind of like, I don't know, keep everything in your head, or you kind of just like on the fly. You just do it. Yeah.
Because once again, you know, you're hustling for, you know, money, costs, all those sort of bits and pieces. So yeah, that's certainly, that was one of the biggest challenges. And I think, you know, obviously it failed in the end, right?
Yeah.
That's there's no brainer about that. We had a lot of success, but obviously failed in the end. And I think had I had got that right at the beginning, I don't think we probably would have failed. Mm-hmm. We've also changed systems in a few bits and pieces, so that probably led to that as well. But that was certainly one of my biggest challenges. And secondly, it's just cash flow. Any business can sort of relate to this, but in our world, we generally get paid once a month. Even though, you know, someone might pay you on the 3rd of this month, you don't get paid that till the 1st of March. So from a cash flow perspective, it's been one of the biggest challenges in business, is maintaining that when we're, you know, quite an expensive business to run. And, you know, once again, I'm very transparent. It's over $250,000 for us to run this business before I pay myself. And
Wow.
that sort of takes a toll on you every month, and making sure that you can sort of get in front of that. And we'll get there eventually, and that's just the evolution of business. But, you know, very early on in that first 12 to 18 months in particular, certainly had its challenges in making sure you had the money there to pay for that bill at that stage and this and that.
Yeah.
So, and make sure you can still put food on your own family's plate and keep your roof over your head.
Yeah, fair enough. And what about like in terms of growth? So you are the only financial advisor on your team. Have you thought about bringing on another one? And then because you've done everything yourself and like you're so personable and so amongst the community, have you thought about like how that's going to work? Because I know that people sometimes like, yeah, I want to come to Adams Financial Group, but like I want Jayden.
Yeah, certainly thought about it. As the clients roll in, you go, oh, that's a lot. I haven't sort of concrete made a decision. I must admit I'm probably leaning towards no. And that's for a number of reasons. But, you know, one that sort of stands out to me is it's my name, it's my logo, it's my reputation. And I don't want that tarnished for all the hard work that goes into it. That's number one. Number two, I know how I give the service to the clients. And I'm not a massive believer, and I've been in businesses that have done this, and seen other clients that sort of go, oh yeah, I've seen Jayden, now I'm going to see Barry, and now I'm seeing Joe because Barry left, or, you know, Barry only looks after this amount of clients now, or this high level client, and I just don't like the way that feels as a consumer. So I really want to make sure I keep that personal approach, stay on top of who I am looking after, and give a really, really good service to those clients. I think our natural evolution will be that if we don't go down that path, we'll be on a wait list to come and see us, which, you know, once again, we talk about, I have a big passion for the industry, so that's just how it is. And I'd love to see us sort of grow and be able to, you know, bring advisors through and offer that sort of service, because there's so many consumers and there's so little advisors. There's, you know, I don't even know the stats on how many people in Australia, but there's 15,000 advisors. That's it.
Yeah. Wow.
So there's too many people for us. You know, we've lost 10,000 advisors over the last 6 or 7 years due to increased regulation and increased qualifications. And, you know, my sort of business evolution doesn't fit in line with even my passion. But there's cost barriers to that. You know, once again, talking about risk to your logo, to your name, all that sort of stuff. But then you compound that with all these costs that already incur that are nearly going to double, because they need a team of support around them. It's a tough sort of carry, and whether I want to go through that, I'm just not quite sure just yet. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, it's actually an interesting topic, because when you start a business, or I know when I was younger and started a business, it's like, okay, how am I going to grow this? Like, growth is like the thing that you think about so much, and like, but then when you start to realize what your priorities are and what like is really important, it's like, okay, well, actually what's important to me is like my reputation and my clients, and I'm okay with putting as many people around me as possible to take away all these other tasks from me so that I can do this part that I feel like I do best. And I'm also okay with maybe not becoming like a 50 employee business, right? Have you thought about that?
Yes, very much so. It's I don't need to make a hell of a lot of money. Like, that's just not how I am. Once again, there's the business side of it, the clients, the reputation, enjoying that, but also enjoying family time. And we have some family goals that we want to do around a bit of travel and things like that. So as you're growing, that limits your ability to do things like that, especially in MI where it's quite hands-on. So very much so. At the beginning, I must admit, if 50, that type of business was never necessarily in my sort of mindset, but as the business has grown, it's certainly grown to that mindset, and seen a lot of other businesses have a lot of other success. But we'll just sort of decide that as we go. But once again, kind of leaned probably towards not.
Yeah, I feel like I've also one of the biggest failures is I've seen in businesses is like growing too fast, and like those growing pains, and then the reputation demise that comes with that as well. So I just think it's interesting that you say that, and I think it's kind of cool that you're like, nah, like I don't need like $1 billion. It's like I just need enough to support my team, support my family, and you're open to potentially the option of growing in that way, but like right now it's a no.
Yeah, pretty well. That's pretty good way to set it. I also, I'm passionate about those other things, like we talk about the community stuff and our profession and the Financial Advice Association Australia. I'm quite in depth with that, and I can put some focus into that, which is yes, volunteer time, but also the business can still operate in a very succinct manner if I'm not having to worry about the other stuff. So I owe the community, the profession, I should say, and the community a little bit of that, because once again, I'm not where I am without that. I wouldn't have won, the award that I won, the national award that I won for financial advice if I didn't know and didn't do these things and wasn't a genuine person. So I sort of owe a little bit back to that over time, and once again, balancing those acts is tricky.
That's cool. Okay, what was we need to know what the award was.
Yeah, Financial Advice Association, so FAAA Rising Star Award. So in 2023 now. So I was able to pass the baton to another young gentleman who won it in November last year, so a couple of months ago. And obviously, it's a nice accolade, don't get me wrong, but we kind of need to push that on now and sort of work on getting the next generation through. That's kind of what that award's about, and what we've done, where we are, and what we're going to do next. So it was obviously a privilege to win it. It was the first one. So we had our associations merged a couple of years ago. So it was the first one in the new association, which is now even growing further. So it was pretty cool to be a part of that. I was able to help judge the award, which it's nice to be on the other side of the foot. And I didn't have to get on stage in front of 1,000 people and talk this time, which I did have to. But it's sort of led to some more opportunity. I was a panelist at the national conference last year, which was cool. Once again, able to share the story and a few little learnings around, people that want to enter the industry, or I want to just take that next, step and start their financial planning business, which, as I know, is challenging.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love it. You're just like very involved in the community and very passionate about the industry as a whole, as well as like your own business and the growth there. So it's really cool. Awesome. Okay, so what are a couple of things, like a couple of pieces of advice that you'd give to anyone who wanted to become a financial advisor or start their own financial advising business? Just like quick tips.
Yeah, okay. I actually got asked this after the conference, which was nice, so I got this one handy. Number one, once I said at the beginning, consider what we're willing to give and what we're not willing to give. And that comes back down to money and available cash flow. That was part one. The next most important thing, and I saw this as the most important thing, was the logo and your business name and your colours. Sounds a bit silly, but at the end of the day, that is what everyone is going to see. That is what they're going to remember. I pick cream and green and those sort of beigey colours because it's calm, it's welcoming. I put the A as the logo because it's, recognizable. I can put it on all my shirts. I can put it on hats. I can put it anywhere, cars. So all of that made a difference because if you invest the money there, and it's not cheap to do those sort of things, but if you invest the money there, it's somewhat some of your advertising budget. So a couple of those little quick things around, logos, costs.
So brand identity, essentially.
Brand identity.
Yep. Love it.
Surround yourself with the right people, but be genuine. That's probably the biggest one is be genuine.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, beautiful. All right, and then what are some tips that you would give to people who are thinking about a financial advisor or something that people could start doing today in terms of advice that you're allowed to give on a public podcast?
Gee whiz, testing me here. No. You're right. Number one, like around if they're considering seeing a financial advisor, there are myths, right? Go in there with an open mindset, understand your goals and why you want those goals. The big why, not just what, but why. And be open to change. That's the biggest one because people are set in ways and that's okay.
Yeah.
But if you're not willing to change, those other goals that you have won't happen. So, there's got to be a bit of brutality there. And I'm not a brutal person, but there is times where we have to have those discussions and say, look, I understand that this is the way it's been. I understand that you feel like you might not be able to make those changes. But if that's your goal, I can see a path here, but you are going to have to change this, this, and this. So have the open mindset when you're going into an advisor.
What would be an example of that? Like what would be an example of a situation? Obviously, we're not talking about a hypothetical situation that someone would come in that have like this or they'd be stuck in this way of thinking and you've had to kind of like had that conversation.
Either a first home or buying their next home or shares or those type of scenarios was a family budget and people earning quite high income that are doing their $15,000 holidays every year. And the girls are getting their hair done every 4 weeks or 6 weeks and their eyebrows every week and their nails every month, right? And the males are going out to the pub or they're going and buying toys, right? Going and playing golf or whatever it is. The mindset of some clients is that that's a necessity. And it may very well be, and that's okay. But having those discussions say, well, if that's what you want to do, this is not reachable or attainable. You're going to have to make some sacrifices along here, and having those discussions is, somewhat a bit brutal, but at the same time, people sometimes want to hear it as well. I'm very transparent. I say, I'm about to tell you some hard truths here if that's what you want to hear, and if you don't, that's cool. And most people are very open and receptive to it. So you got to have that open mind when you're going into an advisor. A couple of things that you can do straight away is look at your spending, track it. Track it for 2 months, 3 months. Print off every bank statement and highlight.
Never ever done this in my life.
And highlight all the things where you go, oh, did I need to spend that? And sometimes you did and sometimes you don't. But needing to identify that. And it's not to say, oh, geez, I overspend a heap in this area, but, it's a nice sort of exercise. And then secondly, restructuring how you set up your accounts and probably I'm trying to visualize it for people who are listening, but setting up where certain things come out of what account and simplifying that process to know I'm only going to put on this card what I need to spend, not what I want to spend. And sort of limiting to go, right, well, if I need $150 a week for my entertainment, which is my coffees, going out to dinner, takeaways for the week. Only putting that on to the card. And if it runs out by Saturday, then so be it. You do that every Sunday night. So it's a nice little budgeting tool to enable you to only spend what you've set aside rather than, I'll just transfer $50 from this account to that account because I ran out.
So when you're talking about that, you kind of, barefoot investor. Okay. We're not bringing him up.
Well, we don't love the barefoot. Nah, we don't love him because I think there's certain things in there that are portrayed to be, this is controversial, by the way, certain things to be portrayed that it's best for everyone. And it's not.
No, because things have to be tailored a bit more.
They are. Like, what could be right for you, it could be so wrong for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it portrays. But it does have some great principles around their budgeting.
Yeah.
So, like, there's certainly good things in there.
Yeah. So what I was going to say when you were talking about writing down your budgets and stuff, or like writing down what you spend, is like, obviously, like, knowledge is power, right? So sometimes it's just about knowing where the money's going.
Yeah, correct.
Right. And then when you're talking about like these different accounts, what do you think about, because I think, like, obviously, this is just my opinion, I'm not a financial advisor, but I do think this is the thing that me and my husband have, because he, like, loves to just, like, keep all the money, like, just in general, like, he doesn't like to spend, right? And I think that's really good. It's really good because he balances me out, because I'm a bit like, I worked hard for this, I'm going to go do whatever I want. But how important do you think it is to, like, allocate some of the money that you have worked for towards things that aren't long-term goals?
Absolutely. For sure. No, you have to get the balance right. You have to. You know, if people want to get to certain places, certainly, like, in a certain time frame, for sure. I'd also personally, this is my personal, I don't see why you need to do that sometimes. You know, like, people want to get to a certain goal in 8 years. Or you could just, you know, get there in 11 years and you can enjoy yourself a little bit. Or you can get there in 15 years and enjoy yourself a little bit more. So I'm probably more down that path. I'm a realist. I'm open with clients about that. I'm a realist. You can certainly do that over here, you know, the really strict one, but I'm a big believer in, you got to be able to look after yourself. Otherwise you'll go crazy.
Yeah, and I guess, like you were saying, it's like tailoring to your different clients, because you might see that one client just needs that little extra push because it is really important for them to get to that goal sooner. Whereas you might see, like, for the happiness of another client, I guess, that giving them that little bit of flexibility, like, well, if it's not super important to be there in 8 years, like, this is how we could structure it, I guess.
Yeah. Otherwise they're going to hate coming to see me, you know, every time, because we're going to look, oh, well, where are you now? Oh, well, I'm back to the same part. Or, you know, you got to get the balance right. You got to give a little bit to get a little bit. And dealing with some of my high profile clients who are athletes, they obviously get paid a lot of money. So I've learned since dealing with them, you really need to go, righto, well, if you're earning this amount of money, let's put certain things to certain places, and this is what you can spend on yourself. Because we know that bills are looked after, home loans are looked after, investment property loans are looked after, shares are looked after. And if they can still go and manage to spend, you know, $1,500 a week after all of that, you know, they're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to give to get. And then they're all happy to know that after 10 years of their footy career, they are set for life. Like, it's that balancing act. And the same thing applies whether you're high profile or you're not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. I have to come see you again, actually. Big things happening over here. My brain is like, da, 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 da.
Interesting.
Yeah. Is there any other bits of advice that you'd give just the everyday person?
Yeah, like Superwise, I suppose, is one that we see commonly. It's just quickly log on to your MyGov and see where your super's at. You might have a couple extra accounts. You might have some with the ATO, is what we call lost super. Don't automatically, my biggest thing here is do not automatically just consolidate them. Like, you can do that online, but you might have insurances that you need because you might have had some medical history that would prevent you from getting new insurance. So if you see multiple accounts, reach out to an advisor. That's my piece of advice.
That's a really good piece of advice. I think, like, for the last, like, 20 years, I think I've been working for like 20 years now, or almost.
Gee whiz.
Can we look at you?
How old are you?
Well, I started working. I got my first job when I was 13 and 9 months old at Domino's. And I've been so bad with my super. Like, I think I've probably lost so much super, like 10 different accounts at least.
Gee whiz.
But I think I've had the same one since I've had inflow.
It's a good start.
Okay, cool. I love that. Well, is there anything that we haven't spoken about today that you would love to, like, add?
I suppose.
Actually, I've got one more question for you.
Yeah, hit me first.
Okay, so who should come see you? Like at what phase of their business, their life? Like who is the client that should be coming to see a financial advisor?
At any stage. There's no set time because generally speaking, everyone has an end ambition, right? Whether there's a point that you can do something straight away or not should not limit you to go and speak to an advisor. I'm a little bit different to everyone anyway, but at the end of the day, I'm very open and upfront, and we have the discussion around their goals, and we sort of say, okay, well, you need to get yourself into this position first before we can do this, this, or this. But it shouldn't limit you from going and speaking to anyone. People have a myth that they need to have a heap of money to go and see someone. It's just complete and utter nonsense, really. We're in an expensive, profession. That's just the reality of it. And I hope probably some people that are listening today can maybe understand why it's expensive around the business costs and things like that. And that's a big driver in it. But we're also very highly qualified people. So, we need to understand that we've done our work and there's a reason that we are where we are. So even though we are a high cost profession, it shouldn't limit you from coming and seeing us and understanding what your options might be.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy for people to leave as long as they leave my meeting with one thing that they can sort of incorporate into their life in a general space.
Yeah.
I'm okay and content with that.
Yeah. And I feel like it's like what you spoke about, like these investments that you made at the start of your business that were like kind of like, I'm going to sacrifice this for this for this. It's like marketing, for example. It's expensive, but if you get it right, you're going to make back more than what you paid. So
Exactly.
like your return on investment is good. And I feel like that's sort of the same with financial advisors.
Yeah, there's I suppose before you leave, I'll just tack on to that. There's tangible and there's intangible things. Tangible in our world is like seeing if you spend money, how much money is that making? Shouldn't be the whole thing. It should be around, okay, what's intangible? It's knowing that they can call anyone, knowing that someone's keeping up with legislation, knowing someone that's experienced, knowing someone that's going to call you if they feel like something's going on, knowing that someone is, constantly reviewing the market. Intangible, there's, only you as a client can put the value on that. And I actually say that to every client I speak to. I'm like, only you can tell. It's not for me to tell you how much value that's worth. This is my fee, right? Yeah. But there's intangible and there's tangible things to it.
And so when someone is seeking that financial advice, what's the process? Is it like do you jump straight into like a retainer? Do you have like the opportunity to have like a meeting, a discovery, a one-off strategy? Like what's the kind of...
Every advice firm is different. I can only speak on mine. We do a discovery meeting at no cost. Okay. In that meeting, we're trying to establish what their goals are, whether we can help, and sort of decide what value we can add to them. Following that meeting, we obviously get an agreement put in place if they are going to move forward. And generally speaking, if it's a new client, we've got to do a statement of advice. That's quite an in-depth thing. There's an onboarding factor to it. There's your initial strategy. That's quite an expensive sort of tool. That's one part of it. Generally speaking, though, that's only ever a once-off because unless your situation drastically changes and, you either win the lotto, you sold a business and you come into a massive windfall, generally speaking, that's once off. And then we do a 12-month retainer. Okay. That has to be renewed in my world anyway. Has to be renewed every 12 months. It doesn't just carry on.
Yeah. So there has to be intentionality behind that renewal. It's not just like, okay, your retainer's rolled on.
Yeah, correct. We have to physically be in front of you. We have to have physically reviewed your situation and have evidence that we've done that. And then you physically have to sign again. It doesn't just like, you have to, there's still some documents in my world, still paper, unfortunately, but it does work in favour sometimes where you have to sign. Yeah,
I actually think that that's like really good. That's really great that you do that as well, because the easier option would just to be like, oh, it's a rollover.
Yeah.
Right. But like you're keeping your integrity and your business and making sure that all your clients are staying aligned and still using your offer.
And and they've certainly legislated more of that, but there's two options. There's my option that I do, and then there's another option which you get a little bit more leeway on time that it can happen, maybe 60 days after the renewal date. It's okay. It's not like it's wrong. It's just I feel like there's a nice viability there and intentionality for me to be in front of you. Yeah.
And I guess also if you've got your clients for 12 months, you can forward plan those meetings
Yeah.
and catch-ups as
And
well.
there's also stuff that just happens like throughout the year. So
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. And I mean, from my experience, like obviously I've come to see you before. We had a meeting, an initial meeting, and this is why I wanted to like ask this, because I know that there'll be other people who are like, oh, I don't know if I should or shouldn't. And we had a meeting, and at the end of that meeting you said like, I don't actually think that you need like me right now. Do these things and then come back. And I actually really value that and appreciate that, because I didn't feel like sold to like, and if you had said like, I really think you need this, we probably would have, right? Because it's like, you know, we're like financially illiterate, but you know, I think that that's really cool that you do that, and it means it's more accessible for more people
for sure.
to know,
To have that
if it's right or wrong.
discovery, and we're just looking at some general stuff like, you know, most people in those positions have got themselves to a certain point, and they can continue on that point depending on what their next goals are. And for you in particular, it's like you were doing the new, you know, another business, you're starting the podcast, you're doing a few other bits and pieces, and that was priority one over this side of it. So we were able to go and say, right, you go sort that out, and then you come back to me, and then we'll really delve into it. But yeah, no, I'm a very open, transparent person in that regard. Like if I don't see the value for you, I'll be open and honest with you.
Yeah. Awesome.
Which I know not a lot of people are.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. Well, to finish up, I'll go back to my question. Was there anything that I didn't ask or we didn't talk about that you would like to bring up before we finish up?
I suppose just like with any business, and I suppose it can resonate with anyone, be yourself. Don't just follow the crowd and the way that it's been done before. I'm very intentional about like the way I dress in my office. Like you probably got me on a good day today, but you know, I've got chinos on with shoes, rolled up chinos and a t-shirt. You know, financial advisors once again have a myth that they need to be in a suit or button up shirts all the time. And don't get me wrong, I wear those some days, but like be yourself. I'm intentional the way I do things, and that can carry forward to anything that you do. Be genuine, and all the success will come to you.
Oh, I love that. That's a great piece of advice to finish up with.
Cool.
Awesome. Also, I know that green and cream are calming colours, but also green is the money colour.
It is, I know.
And this green actually matches your eyes very nicely.
Oh, thank you. There you go.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the poddy.
worries. Thanks for having me.
And all your advice. And if anyone wants some financial advice, Jayden is your man. Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
No worries.